While we're waiting for Kathy to get on fully, let's start with a couple of things. Last week when we started our first session, I said to you that it was amazing how God's Holy Spirit is working in bringing the same ideas to our Bible study as what I'm preaching on. And, I'd already planned for what I was going to be preaching on this coming Sunday before I even looked at today's study. And today's study matches up so well with Sunday and where we're going for the next few weeks. So the Holy Spirit sovereignly keeps working things out to reinforce ideas again and again. So that's kind of neat. But I want to ask you a question as we're getting started tonight. Let's talk about roller coasters. That obviously was a subject that came up in the study that you were to have watched. Let's ask the question, how many of you are lovers or were lovers of roller coasters, maybe when you were younger? And how many of you have always been fearful and terrorized by roller coasters? Let's see the hands of roller coaster lovers, first of all. So I see, keep those hands up. I want to keep seeing them. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 roller coaster lovers. And let's see, maybe 9. And let's see the roller coaster haters. Put your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm seeing Becky's giving me a thumbs up there with her. She's on
Must
now.
add.
So it's pretty kind of almost even. I think I didn't get some of your hands, but from what I'm gathering here, we almost have a 50-50 split of lovers and haters. Does anybody have a favorite roller coaster that you could name if you are a lover of roller coasters, that is?
Space Mountain.
Go ahead, Ernie.
Space Mountain.
Where is that?
Disney.
Disney. Okay. How about
Remember that one,
Cedar
Tracy?
Point?
I like
How
Maverick.
about Cedar Point? What's the favorite roller coaster at Cedar Point for some of you lovers?
Maverick.
Millennium.
I used to like that old rickety wooden one.
Gemini.
Gemini was good.
That new steel one is really good.
My dad helped build the Gemini.
Yeah, those clackety-clack ones are fun, the wood ones.
There was the demon drop back in the day.
You hated Blue Streak. Mom lost her glasses on that one.
I don't like it.
How about you who are roller coaster haters? Have you ever gone on a roller coaster and therefore you had a bad experience and that's what turned you off, or have you just never done it?
My nephew works for Disney, and I went to visit him, and he took me to a park, and one of the parks was had rock and rollin' roller coaster, and it was like it goes from 0 to 100 in like 2 seconds. And I got to the front of the line, and I was just like they talked about in that thing. I looked at them take off, and I was like, Patrick, I don't think I could do this. And he's like, yeah, Debbie, you could do it. I'm like, I really don't think I can do it. But I did it. And when I got done, I thought I'd have a heart attack. Luckily, it was all dark, so I didn't see stuff. And I just was really lightheaded when I got off, and I just looked at him. I said, I better be favorite Aunt Stetta's here, buddy. That's all I'm going to say. That is the last one I've gone on.
Anybody else with bad experiences that has forever, wounded you
I
from
was on.
coasters?
They were.
Good.
We were talking about the demon drop. My kids found me after I was on the demon drop. They said, "No, Mom screams like that." Hi there. Should
So
be
they
there
didn't
here.
find you laying down below. They found you on a park bench or something, I assume.
Well, they as I was coming off the steps, I said, "How did you find me?" And they said, "There's only one mom that screams like that." Could do with computer. Okay, I'm going to hang up my phone now.
Okay, we'll see you in a minute. Yeah, once I actually got Cindy up to the point of getting on a roller coaster, and then she couldn't do it, and so she had to take the walk of shame.
Aw.
Well, I've been on many, 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 many roller coasters.
Well, I turned white as a sheet.
You know, I loved roller coasters when I was a kid. I rode them all the time. When I had children, all of a sudden it changed.
I wanted to do it one more time before I get too old. Rochelle. I
I'm
heard
ready
that.
to go.
Pastor Jeff, I hated to admit it to you, but I couldn't find my blue chip until
find it.
today.
You found it.
It was in this bag.
Here it is. I just pulled it out of my pocket.
Yep.
And I actually have two. I keep two in my pocket to give one away.
Wow.
So,
Okay, I'm all set up now.
right. So roller coasters. Why do you think Jonathan used the analogy of roller coasters in tonight's lesson? What was the purpose in talking about roller coasters?
I could get the wrong one.
Trust.
Trust.
Mhm.
And what are we kind of going through right now?
Yeah, trust
It's a
in
roller
people to-
coaster every day. Every day, every day that news conference comes on, my stomach gets a knot.
Right.
So
A lot of ups and downs, right? Yep. So we're on a roller coaster, and we're gonna Cindy's gonna head out here for just a second. It sounds like maybe our stove is buzzing. I don't know what she has in there, but I haven't eaten supper yet, so that's making my stomach growl. You know we won't be going 2 hours tonight. But we're going to jump into our lesson for tonight. And if you have a Bible and you want to open to Luke chapter 12 or on your phone.
By the way, I'm not Mel Gurry.
You aren't.
Oh,
I see it says Mel Gurry. I'm not Mel Gurry.
So could somebody read for us Luke 12, verse 13 through 21? We have a volunteer. 13 through 21.
I've got it if anybody else, unless somebody else wants to read it.
The man. You're the man, Bob.
Go.
Go for it.
Go for it. The parable of the rich fool. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich towards God.
Awesome. Doesn't he do a good job?
Yeah, he does.
So as we kind of get into this lesson tonight, in the video, Jonathan referenced a passage here in Luke where Jesus tells this parable about the rich man. He has this abundant harvest. And the question is, why does the Lord refer to the rich man as a fool for how he handled his wealth in the parable? Thoughts on that?
Because they already had where to eat it anyway.
Is somebody talking? If they were, I don't think we could hear too well. No need to speak up.
Can you ask it again, Jeff? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, that's all right.
Why does the Lord refer to the rich man as a fool for how he handled his wealth in the parable?
Because it's almost like he wasn't trusting. He was saving it all up and preparing for himself, but maybe wasn't doing his Christian duty of, I imagine he wasn't sharing it as he should have and patting himself on the back instead of praising God for his blessing.
So was it that he wasn't trusting at all? Or was it that he was trusting in the wrong thing?
He's only trusting in himself and his own wealth.
He wasn't trusting in God to supply him as it was needed. He felt he needed to do it and that it was all in his hands. And he wanted to pat himself on the back and say, hey, look at me, see what I did, instead of what God did.
This pandemic taught us about the things that perhaps
Can't hear you, Jeff.
have previously trusted in.
Jeff, can't hear you.
What has this pandemic taught us about the things that people have previously trusted in?
It can
Well, that
disappear in a minute. They can be out of work, no money. Hey, you go to the grocery stores, look how fast there's no toilet paper or
Right.
paper towels. Unbelievable.
Somebody mentions the pigs aren't making it to market. There's no
Yep.
bacon.
We're not in
When we talk in
control.
the Bible about things that people would trust in that were other than God, what were those things called in a word?
Idols.
Ourselves.
So we heard a couple of idols: toilet paper, pork.
Yeah.
What are some other idols that we have been reminded of in these days?
Eating out,
Eating out.
restaurants.
Mhm.
Masks.
Yep.
Masks.
Think we have to sometimes be careful that we don't use some of the decision makers as idols.
We are on a roller coaster. And
Maybe
one of the
in a way, before the pandemic happened, we were similar to the fellow that we just read about. We're storing up savings, we're storing up retirement, we're storing up, whatever wealth from our careers. We're going after our careers with more education, what have you. Now, in the blink of an eye, all of that has changed. And so for me personally, I don't know what work I am going to have from day to day. I just found out today, now my whole job's being changed again. So there is no, we've been like this guy, taking it easy, being merry, going on vacations, buying all whatever we want to buy to please ourselves. And now everything's a complete flip-flop, and there is no certainty, at least in our healthcare field. There's no certainty right now. So in health, your health isn't a certainty anymore. So, and people are getting sick that you wouldn't think would be getting sick. And it's scary.
where can we place our trust? We're finding out that the things that
Can't hear you.
maybe we're finding out that the things that we thought that we weren't putting our trust in, that unsuspectingly, even as Christians, we were putting our trust in a lot of other things other than the Lord, right? And so this is a time that's causing us to have to kind of, to use a military term, to reconnoiter or to take stock, right? And to think
Like I
about the things that are important.
Well, like I said, Jeff, I know I've shared this with, I think, you and Heidi, but, when this whole thing kind of transpired, I know the imagery that I got from the whole situation was, God was up there and this was him pulling back the reins and just saying, okay, whoa, 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 guys, you are so completely off, with how we fill our schedules and everything that we feel we need to do in a given day, whether it's for our family, careers, and everything. And just pulling back the reins and say, okay, wait a minute, it's time to stop some stuff and pull the focus back to me, have everybody kind of regroup and get our primary focus where it needs to be.
It sort of reminds me of the story, the Tower of Babel, right? When everybody, after years, got together, people working together, they're going to build this big tower that goes up into heaven. They're going to go up and meet God up above. And all God had to do was change their languages.
Well, we're certainly having to change a lot of languages right now, aren't we? We're certainly having to change a lot of languages right now, aren't we?
Yeah.
I know Heidi and I are.
Well, the other thing is we're not guaranteed tomorrow. Before I got on here, I just found out that one of my former students mom passed away. She was 50 years old. I have no idea what happened. I mean, I'm a little in shock, as it said, suddenly. And that just brings back to me that we have Jesus, but not everybody does. And we need to make sure that we're sharing his love so that people can find that hope that we have. I mean, the fact that we get to be home and spend time with him, you know, we just need to share that love with others so they want it, you know.
So in the parable that Bob read for us, it's talking about the importance of wealth compared to human life. And I think we've all seen that brought into a glaring perspective when we think about priorities. A lot of people's 401ks and their stock portfolios and the certainty of the future financially may not be nearly what it was, but we've all been sheltering in place because of the importance of life over all of those things. And here was a man in our parable who got his priorities out of whack, and he built bigger barns. And then along comes God and says, hey, what? Guess what? Tonight your life is required of you. I don't know if this is one of those moments in which God is coming down and saying, hey, all of you, this is a kind of a require of you moment in which I'm slapping you upside the head and trying to get your attention. And whether, as I was talking with Paul yesterday, Lechner, God doesn't need to, zap in some kind of a miracle, momentarily. If he knows all of time, he knew that all of this was going to happen eons ago. And in the fullness of time, it isn't as if he needs to make something happen. This was already planned long before you and I were ever born. But here we are now in the midst of this. So we heard at the end of the parable, Bob read, this is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. So amidst this crisis and the economic downturn that is happening, what does it mean for us, do you think, to kind of turn around and to refocus and be rich toward God as opposed to rich toward things? What are some of the things that we would maybe say it means to be rich toward God?
To truly follow the second great commandment, putting others before ourselves, helping people, working with people, worrying about their needs, giving some of our own stuff away to help others.
Bob, other thoughts?
Acknowledging where our blessings are coming from.
Thankful.
I just said we should be sharing our riches and talents and be willing to help others who maybe are in need of any type of need that they may have, but obviously sharing the love of Christ, we really should be the church.
Someone has a Bible. Could you look up for me and then read 1 Timothy 6, 12 through 19? Could somebody look up and read 1 Timothy 6, 12 through 19?
I've got it.
Okay.
Fight the good fight of faith. Take
Are
hold.
you in 2 Timothy or 1
Oh.
Timothy?
I'm in 1 Timothy. Did you say 2 Timothy?
It said 1 Timothy 6, 12.
Yeah.
Excuse me. 17. I had it misread. 17
Oh, okay.
through 19.
All right. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasures for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life.
According to Paul, what is this life that is truly life? What does it mean to be rich toward God?
It says to be generous and rich in good deeds.
And in so doing, what will we end up laying up?
Firm foundation.
A firm foundation,
Treasures
and
in
also
heaven.
what?
Treasures in the, yeah, it says laying up treasures for
Where?
themselves, yeah, in heaven, I guess. Yep.
Right. Remember, Jesus, as we look back at the passage that continues on, that Bob was reading, it continues on with some of the same stuff that we read last week about worry. And as we get down to verse 32 of Luke 12, would somebody read verse 32 through 34 of Luke 12? A little further down from where Bob read.
Something happened.
Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give it to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will not be exhausted, where no thief comes near or no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. Your heart will also be. Will be also. I can't read.
We got the point.
So what can we say about what we've learned about where our hearts perhaps have been, that has been revealing about where our treasure has really been in the midst of this virus, what it has revealed to us? Have we put too much trust in the wrong things?
Absolutely. I felt, there's too many outside attractions for our families. Seems to have brought a lot of our families closer. They had to live under one roof and eat the same meals. They just had to learn to live together, is something that we were missing, I think.
That's kind of what I was relating to too. I saw that just within the first couple of weeks because, everyone's got their own daily agenda. And even in our own household, someone's here, someone's there. And to get all 5 people at the dinner table at the same time, it's like, okay, grab a bite, bye, see you later, gotta go. And, now we're confined to the house. And, the kids think we're old now because we've resorted to rummy matches and bird watching, doing that. But we have to do it as a family. So those times, now we sit at the dinner table and no one's got any place to go. So you get to sit down and have a conversation. And what did you do today? And, what did you see, that was funny or whatever? And you get to talk about it and you get to have those moments with the kids where we weren't having those moments with our kids. And now you're able to have those. So like I said, it's just a pull back on the reins and a big eye opening and saying, hold on, let's refocus. So.
Last night, usually when I call my granddaughter, for all these years that they've lived in Europe, it's hard to get a hold of, she's always running off to tennis practice, basketball practice, all this stuff. Last night I had to sit patiently through at least a half hour of magic tricks and card tricks on an international phone call. But it was great. It was great. She wasn't running off to anywhere.
Do you think somehow that the Apostle Paul,
I'm sorry.
Do you think somehow the Apostle Paul had some kind of a magical window into today and this coronavirus 2,000 years ago when he said to us, do not put your hope in wealth, which is so uncertain? Did he have some magical window that he was able to see this coronavirus 2,000 years ahead of time? Truth doesn't change, does it?
No.
The truth was the truth then, and the truth is the truth today.
Exactly.
It's the same truth, isn't it?
Exactly.
And if we are willing to read and to know the truth, which is right in our Bibles, and live by that truth, when things like this come along, then we're not going to be as pummeled around by the storm because we're already anchored, aren't we? This Sunday, I've already sent off to Heidi and Rod today the songs that I've prepared for Sunday. And I'll have to say one thing, it's been very different. I was talking to the worship committee the other night, a little bit about this. It's been a very different journey in how we go about preparing music and all that, but it's a lot of time spent kind of culling through a lot of different artists and songs that kind of fit certain themes. But I think you'll be fascinated by the last song that we will have in our worship service Sunday. I'm going to ask you all a question. How many of you remember a song from maybe 10 to 15 years ago that came out on the Christian radio stations, and it was called The Lumber Song? If you remember it, raise your hand. Interesting. Well, then Sunday, I want you to listen closely to the closing song in the service called The Lumber Song. Because as today we meet a man who built bigger barns in which he took the lumber of this earth, and he was rich in the things of this earth to build his barns with all the lumber that he had to build. The song that we're going to hear at the end of the service Sunday talks about a guy that went to heaven. And Peter took him down the golden streets, and there were all these big mansions. And finally took him to this little shack. And when he asked Peter, well, how can this be my place? And Peter said, don't you know? That's all the lumber you sent. And we keep hearing that phrase again and again in the story of the song. That's all the lumber. That's all the lumber. That's all the lumber you sent. To be rich toward God is to be sending ahead treasures in heaven, not storing up treasures on earth. So I hope you'll listen keenly to that song, because it really is a powerful song that we'll hear at the end of the service on Sunday. And as Rochelle reminded us, we are commanded to do good, to be rich in good deeds. And in the next few weeks here in May, we're going to be focusing in on, as Bob reminded us, the great commandments of loving God and loving our neighbors as ourselves. And what does that mean in the midst of a coronavirus? Any thoughts? All right, let's move on to Mark. Would somebody read chapter 10, verses 40 through 45 of Mark chapter 10 for us?
But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those whom they have been prepared. When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Jesus called them together and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over you, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many.
I've talked a couple of times historically about the early church in the last number of weeks in messages, and Jonathan shares from the same guy that I've talked about, Dionysius, and his account of how Christians responded to plagues that overwhelmed the Roman Empire in the 3rd century AD. So the church, as a result of that, grew tremendously in those times due to the faithful witness of believers risking their own comforts to serve the pagan Roman society around them. So here's the question. How does this example from church history illustrate what Jesus says about serving others that we just heard in Mark 10:45? For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for others. How does church history, what does it teach us about what Jesus had to say during times of plagues and pandemics that's relatable for us today?
We need to find ways to look out for those in need first.
No, it's so easy for us to, in times of fear, and last week what did we learn about what we feed?
Whatever we feed grows.
Either we feed fear or we feed faith. Either it's God or Google, right? So as we think about how easy it is to hole up in our houses and focus only on ourselves and fear in our families, why is it so important for us to redeem this time and to make the most of these opportunities that God is providing, to be mindful of finding ways of serving others during this coronavirus? Why is this so important for us as Christians? What's at stake?
Well, our own lives are at stake, but other people's lives are at stake too. And this is when the harvest for God can increase, because there's people out there that are hurting and seeking. And if we can help to establish God's love in somebody else's life, then we're actually serving God's mission for us.
And also, we're supposed to be representatives of Jesus Christ. And when God gives us all these opportunities, this is the time we should be stepping up to the plate so that all others can see. Not for pride, not for boasting, but so others can see that, God is with us.
And that should be for people, outside of the church and within the church. I mean, just like Pastor Jeff's sermon was a couple weeks ago, encouraging one another. And I have to admit, I had one of those major sledgehammer, I think, to the head in the last couple of weeks again from God. It's crazy. It's gone from a tap to a major sledgehammer, I think, on the head. But, you get those thoughts in your mind and, you're always kind of like, well, where did that come from and stuff. And you're like, oh, you just throw it off to the side and it comes back again. And you're like, oh, no, just let it go. And, we'll worry about it later. And it comes back again. And just was watching this video last night. There was somebody that had been on my mind and prayerfully with their situation. And I'm like, I could call and help them with anything. And that was what my thought was. And I'm like, no, they've got it. They don't need my help. They're fine and everything. Then after watching this video last night, I'm like, okay, fine. And when he was talking about, using your technology, being creative, trying to reach out to other people and stuff, I'm like, I could easily send a text and just say, hey, is there anything you need? You've been in my thoughts, my prayers, just let me know. And so finally I did. And just the blessing in that. But, they really don't need anything at this point in time, but she at least knows it's there, that if she does, she can call on me. So, but, it's crazy how, we're so willing to poo-poo, those thoughts that we do get. I say that the older I get, I act on them a little bit more, but I don't think I do. So, but.
Thank you for sharing that story, Danielle. That's an excellent example. What are some other practical examples that you have thought of or have seen others do? Or I know we don't like to do this because we consider it bragging. What are some opportunities that you've been able to take advantage of in terms of serving others thus far in the almost 2 months now that we are in this coronavirus? Examples?
I've been sewing masks, not a whole lot, but as people asked for them, I've been sewing them. And one of my elderly neighbors realized I was, and so she asked for 2. And so I made her 2, like within a couple hours, she was so pleased. Well, then I got a phone call from her and she said, well, you do sew, right? And I'm like, yeah. She brought over 2 house coats for me to rehem, because when she walks, she leans over, using her walker, she leans over and she steps on the front of her house coats. So from me sewing those Mass, she decided to call me to see if I'd fix her nightgowns or her house coats. So, you just one thing leads to another, and it makes you feel good because she made me feel good because she called and wanted to know. Well, it's Bob Thompson and mom, Mabel Thompson. Oh, Dan, never mind. They can't come to our church because he's in a wheelchair.
Sarah and Dave McCormick.
Yeah.
McCormick, yeah.
Yeah, it's her mom. It's her mom.
Okay.
So now we have to be sure and get together after this is all over for coffee. So it's just new relationships in my area that we didn't have before. We're all sort of looking out for each other.
Kathy, do you remember in the book of Acts when Peter and John were on their way to the temple and the beggar who was begging asked for healing and they did so, and then he wanted some alms or some money, and what did Peter say? Peter said, "Silver and gold have I none, but such as I have give I thee. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rise up and walk."
Right.
So, then it goes on, walking and leaping and praising God. If any of you have ever heard that song before. But such as I have gave you to her, didn't you?
Yes.
You can sow. So you gave her that. Such as what we have. So what are others such as what you have that you can give or have been giving or seen examples of that you thought, hey, you know what? I might be able to do that.
I'm sending out the upper rooms now for the shut-ins. And I thought, well, I'll just stick a little note in there to say, well, if you need anything, let us know. Well, one of the ladies called and asked me if I knew of somebody who could mow her yard. So we found somebody and they're mowing her yard now, and that's taken care of. So just a little thing.
Wonderful. Brennan, what are a couple things that I've asked you to do?
Help put together a couple Zoom meetings.
Have you been over helping any of our more mature members in the congregation at all?
Yeah, a couple. Yep.
So what was the situation?
Just setting them up, helping them with Zoom and Right Now Media and email, and got a couple gallons of milk for somebody, and mostly just technology stuff, stuff with their computer. Yep.
Silver and gold have you none. You got lots of chickens.
That we do. Yep.
Silver and gold have you none, but such as you have, technology, you've been helping, right?
Yep.
Rich toward God.
Yep.
Other examples?
I love using my job as a way to get into people's homes and give a little bit extra. And so I call ahead and just, I've gotten the opportunity to go pick up something for somebody, or, there's a lot of single, very, very lonely people, and spending the extra time and letting them tell me their stories and their concerns. And I might be scheduling my appointments a little bit longer these days, but if, just helping where, even if it's just a pair of ears and they get to see a brand new face for a little while, even if it's half covered. But
But isn't it more important that you get through these appointments quickly and get on to the next sales call so that you can make more calls and make more money?
Well, now I can work later because I can do virtual. So no. But yeah, I mean, I try to make the time for people. That's why I like my job. I mean, I like money too, but
Is God providing?
yeah, somehow when I mean, I'm dependent on people making purchases. I don't really make a living otherwise, and somehow I've managed to get through all of this without really even having to pinch that much. And it's the first week I was a mess if you talk to me, but I haven't really had to worry about a thing. That's my miracle.
It's a good one.
What do we trust in? And when we trust in the Lord, He promises to not fail us. And so we're having to learn to trust more, aren't we?
Yes.
In God. To become richer in God. So we're using technology tonight. We've talked some about technology. And certainly that is, as Bob said, with the analogy of the tower, we're having to learn some different languages, aren't we, Bob?
Oh yeah.
I know it took your brother an hour and a half last week to help you begin to learn this different language, didn't it?
Yep. He couldn't believe it. He says he did it himself in 3 or 5 minutes when he set up his. So he thought he was going to walk in here in 5 minutes, walk out.
How is technology and some of the creative ways that we have been using technology, either in the church or some of the new ways that you have been learning to use technology, or maybe in how you've been teaching others to use technology, been a blessing in the midst of this coronavirus? Can we talk about that a little bit as we start to wrap up and head towards home? Share
Well,
some of the blessings.
I got to see my Aunt Liz tonight, and I haven't seen her in years because I taught her to click a button on Facebook, and we got to video chat.
Wonderful. How have others of you been blessed by the acceleration of technology in your life that maybe 2 months ago you never would have imagined some of the things that you are doing now or experiencing? I remember, Bob, the first Sunday we had a parking lot service. You were like the last one almost to leave on Easter.
Yeah.
And you were sitting there in your car and you rolled up to me with this contemplative look on your face. You kind of shook your head and you said, "You know what, Pastor? I'm never going to forget today as long as I live." Why did you say that?
Yeah, just to be there together with everybody was such a good feeling, and yet, and it's and we're expressing our honoring God in a safe way. And I say this because as I told cousins like Florida and Rhode Island and whatnot, that we started driving in the parking lot, explaining the whole situation. And they envied us. The churches aren't doing anything. And, and the fact that we are, I felt like, we're setting an example to others. It's again, honoring God. I think that's so important to stand out, to be an example.
Well, maybe I'm being a little biased, but it seems like brethren have they're on YouTube, they're on Facebook. Every Sunday you'll find somebody, one of the brethren churches, doing a service. You could listen all day long to different services and songs. I mean, I listened to Tina from Arizona after I've been to church here, you know, or I listened to any of the other churches, their service.
I was on with Tina this morning at 8 o'clock this morning.
Right.
With she and Paul and a couple of the other local pastors, Steve, we were all on together with an area pastors meeting with Chris Hawk, and so I got to see Tina this morning. Yeah.
Well, and just being able to do this where you can see everybody and talk to each other is just a wonderful thing. Because I think when you're home isolated, like my mom can't do this. She can't do this at all. So I can take it over to her and we can sit together and watch services. And that's been a blessing to be able to do that. So, I mean, I'm on an IEP for technology, and this teaching online stuff, oh my goodness, it's been a huge learning curve, but lots of good things have happened from it, and hopefully will continue. I mean, it's forcing us old people to get into the current era. So.
I have to say that the onset of technology was probably part of the downfall of, as it got more and more, I became less and less happy with my job. And it was probably the final thing that led to my retirement. I didn't want to deal with the technology anymore. And I've told several people I need to bite my tongue, but I really like technology these days because of being able to do these kind of things. So I'm learning.
Technology is a tool that can be used for good or for evil, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We're trying to use it to outflank the devil, aren't we? And bring glory to God.
Amen.
And we talked at the board meeting the other night just about God's sovereignty and how he knew this was all going to happen. Remember back before Christmas, you know, the youth put on their play. The first time we had video up on the new video projectors and the TV screens in the sanctuary. And then soon after the new year, we had Right Now Media. We didn't know all this stuff was going to happen. And the visioning committee and Debbie and I are smiling at each other right now. And all the work that we did, Ernie is listening in as well on the visioning committee, that all of the time we spent and technology and being nimble and flexible and responsible and getting younger and stronger. These were the very things that we were about ready to talk with the board about. Right when Corona hit, we had to kind of put a little bit of a timeout on things, but these are the very things that we've had to put into practice and learn how to do. Right, Deb? Right, Ernie? Yeah.
Yeah, and getting these younger and stronger ones involved in it has been a blessing, a true blessing. So, you know, God works amazing things. He really does.
Well, one of the things you mentioned, Tina, somebody mentioned Tina earlier, and she had gone to Arizona to be with her mother.
Yeah.
And she started doing online worship services, almost a month before the pandemic really hit. And it was kind of like, man, she has her foot in the door while the rest of us are trying to catch up. And who knew? She didn't even know.
Let's finish with one more thought, folks. And this is something that I'll kind of reemphasize on Sunday. How can helping others help us to avoid being overly anxious in this time of the pandemic and the economic downturn? How can helping others help us to be less anxious?
Well, we find out we're not the only ones in this boat. I mean, we're all in it, and we all need to help each other.
Well, and it makes you feel good to help others. It just brings your focus away from you and onto where it should be.
Whenever I start to get stressed out and go down the hole, my mom always says, "Who else can you help?" You know, get your focus on somebody else and it won't feel so bad. See, I was listening.
Problems don't seem so big, do they?
Well, and it doesn't always take money. I mean,
Right.
that's the thing. It's, you know, because I know there's people that financially are really struggling. But even if you're at that point, there's things you can do for others, just reaching out and talking or sending a text or sending a card or, you know, things that don't cost a lot of money, but they mean a lot.
Well, people that are by themselves are very, very, very lonely.
Mm-hmm.
And that just requires time.
Got lots of that right now, don't we?
Yep.
Let me encourage you to evaluate your daily routines and decide how your daily routines might be modified to incorporate intentionally serving others. We're going to be focusing on that in the next weeks in our times together on Sundays. But I encourage you to be praying and thinking and acting yourself of how you can serve your neighbor, love your neighbor as yourself. Create a list of people who God might give you to serve, and then find specific ways to do that. Maybe it'll be using technology, the internet, but maybe it'll be letter, or maybe it'll be the cell phone, or maybe it'll be dropping off a note on their doorstep or on their doorknob, a word of encouragement. How can you do that? Well, once again, good to be with you all tonight. Lots of good discussion. We'll be back together next Wednesday night for session 3. I hope that you all will have a good week in the Lord. How about we close with the word of prayer? Father God, we thank you for each individual and for the particular sphere or circle of influence that you have placed them in. That is by no accident. You have put them where you have put them to be used by you and to make a difference. Open our eyes that we might see. Help us to see, Lord, the ways that you want to use us right where we are. Silver and gold we might not have, but such as we have, help us to give to thee and to use. What are the gifts? What are the resources that only we, each of us, uniquely have, that you have especially positioned us in a way that we can be used to touch the lives that you have put us into contact with? Help us to see these unique times as times that you have prepared since the foundation of the world, that we might be used for you. Help us to redeem these times and to use them to your glory, to lead others to you. We give you thanks, Lord. How much do we have to be thankful for? We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Debbie, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about that young lady that she found her mom. She had gone somewhere and come home, and her mom was sitting in a chair But the other thing is the neighbor that lives right next to her, their name is Bowman. And when the older man passed away, that young lady's dad would go over there and help take care of Bowman's yards and stuff. And now she's on in the hospice. That older lady's in hospice right now. So it's going to be sort of a double whammy for that man, because he's went through with his wife and then a very good elderly friend. So they really do need our prayers. It's a tough
And
situation
she
for them.
and the daughter is only I think she'll be a sophomore next year or junior in high school.
Junior, I think.
So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe she'll be a junior. I had her in second grade, so
Yeah.
my heart's broken for them.
Yeah.
Just a word to you all. I talked to Martha Kaufman today. Janine had surgery today, outpatient, to scrape the arthritis off of her shoulder and to remove some fluid. They got back home early afternoon, and so Janine was resting comfortably from all of the drugs that she was on. But if you know anything about Janine, she has trouble with anesthetic. So in the middle of the night tonight, when that wears off, she often has troubles where she gets very nauseous and she throws up uncontrollably. We could use all of our prayers tonight that the Lord would just calm her system and prevent a violent reaction after the meds wear off. Keep her in your prayers. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayo con Dios, my darlings.
Bye all.
Bye.
Arrivederci.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Night.
Thanks, Brennan. Who loves you, baby?
You do.
And?
He does.
Good answer. Well trained.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah.
Hey, Pastor Jeff.
Yeah.
What time did you want me to come help do videos tomorrow?
Yeah.
What time you thinking?